What's going on, Chuckleheads? Welcome back to Voices in the Stands. I am Carlo Guadagnino, the host of Dingo Talk. This is not Dingo Talk, though. This is the band of misfits that have come together to talk as a fan group about Division III football. We're going to talk about a lot of things, right? This week, we're going to talk E8 PAC. I'm sure, as you guys can see, Moosehogan is joining us. He's going to have his say because, wow, did they make a statement in the PAC out in Washington, Pennsylvania. Then we're going to send it to Josh, who's going to talk to us a little bit about what we learned about UW, the Warhawks out in Wisconsin, Whitewater. He's also going to talk to us a little bit about the preparations for the quarterback they do, which is a live broadcast. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. And then we're talking about game day with him. Then we're going to jump over to Mike, who's going to give us the entire WIAC report. I might jump into a conversation with him at the end of that. And then we're going to send it to Matt, who's going to give us a recap preview of the CCIW. And we're all going to come back as a group. As you see, David's there. We're going to welcome North Central to the division conversation. And, we'll find out what we're in for from them. But starting things off, let's send it to the E8 PAC conversation. And Moosehogan, I got nothing but 60 for you of silence so that you can have your bet.
Thank you, there, Colin. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Moosehogan. And lots of people know that Moosehogan was dead. We were done. It was over. And I'll tell you what, brother. Moosehogan came stampeding live, brother. We went to the mountaintop. We went out there to Pennsylvania, and we showed the world. What you gonna do, brother? What you gonna do with Moosehogan? One's wild on you.
Now, there's a couple other things that we're going to get to, and that he's not wrong. They really rolled. Utica rolled into Washington, Pennsylvania, which Tony and I will talk about here at the end of this segment. Tony, talk to me a little bit about what else happened around the Empire 8. The PAC didn't go over against the conference, as you know. Grove City went up to Cortland, pretty anticipated match, and they really handled business up there in Cortland. What around the Empire 8? From your standpoint?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I wasn't as surprised at the outcome ultimately of the game from Grove City and Cortland, and I'll tell you why. And no shots at Cortland. I just feel like Cortland had a lot. They have a lot going on as a program. They have a lot of talent there, but it's a whole new coaching staff. It's a lot to be asked for. It's a lot of pressure being ranked number 10. Out of the gate. And I just felt like Grove City was just a more consistent, seasoned, well-gelled team. And those boys play, right? They came up there. Mm-hmm. They weren't going to mess around. I feel like Cortland will learn a little bit about that loss. I do not count Cortland out, but I think the E8 in general, there's a lot of teams now. There's a lot more parity than there was generally. Before, it was either Cortland and that's it, right? I feel Brockport, Utica now is going to be in the mix. I feel like there's going to be a lot of good conference games when conference play starts. But Grove City did what they needed to do. They went into Cortland, and they kind of inserted their dominance.
Right. Now let's talk about. I'm going to jump in here to of what the other schools in the PAC did. Obviously, Marietta opened with a home or on Westminster. The real story there, and I really got to, before I start this, give credit for to Gamer, another guy that's kind of been helping out with behind the scenes for this. Marietta had 41 plus minutes of time of possession. They end up winning the game 12-8. Not that Westminster didn't have opportunities. In fact, play had on offense. It looked like they were going into at least field goal range or getting themselves into to throw a ball into the end. Unfortunately, a fumble happens and Marietta takes it away. Grove City, the bright spot, also Coach Goff over there at St. Vincent getting a W, another bright spot, but pretty disappointing week for the PAC. And I say that as the guy who my first two articles, I guess you'll call them, on D3.com, I was high on Westminster and the President's Athletic Conference. I thought it was going to be a good week. They end up going 2-8-1. The one tie being Rowan and Case Western, who was another team that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. I don't have enough information to talk to you about why it ended up in a tie. There's a whole rule list and how that breaks down and whatnot. Teal, Bethany, they really struggled. It just really struggled offensively, and that led to the defenses being tired, being in position where they gave up points. Allegheny played them a very hard-fought game. They come away with an L. And the one that for me, as my first guest to open the 2020 season, was Coach DeMarco. Geneva had a very slow start, and it kind of snowballed from there. They got behind the 8 ball, still put up some points. All those games to lead into the game that you and I were kind of back and forth on X about. We had a little fun back and forth at the beginning. We both did, I thought, a great way of putting out what was going on during that game. I think, I had made a comment to you. It almost seems there's a respect between Coach Faj and Coach Sirianni, but they don't seem to other. And the teams seem to kind of represent that. They didn't. The teams there was no love loss. There was a lot of chip in the first half. The biggest one being the roughing the passer with a targeting call, eliminating Newton, I believe is his last name. Yep. From the content. From that point on, everything seemed to calm down a little bit. W&J had a little bit of momentum going into the half. They get the ball, and then that third quarter, I mean, you talk about I'm going to give you the opportunity because there's a quarterback out there, Utica, that made a huge statement, 500 plus yards. You told me before this record, a school record. Let's talk about it. What did you see in the W&J Utica game?
Thanks. Yeah, that was a great lead up. So, obviously from the jump, everyone, Moosehogan said it before, everyone expected really W&J to come and kind of take Utica out to the woodshed, right? That was the expectation. There was a lot of hype going into the game. There were some scheduling kind of issues at one point. Was the game going to be played or was it not or whatever? And once the schools figured that out, Utica was really, really going into the game. Yeah, they had a little chip on their shoulder because no one expected us to kind of go in there and really compete, right? There's a lot of change, not only in the E8, there's a lot of change in Utica, right? A lot of kids moved on. There's some transfer kids that came over, and so I think they went in there and they prepared well. And I'll be honest with you, that first half, it was a dogfight, right? It was a little bit of a dogfight. You get the right out of the gate. You get W&J coming and returning that ball, and I'll tell you, like, right. As a fan watching that, I'm like, oh man, for right out of the gate, big special teams play, and you're like, geez. And then they came in, they handled their business, and boom, 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 they score, and you're kind of like, all right, well, this is what character's about, right? It's when you get punched in the face like that. What do? Do you come out and you start getting nervous, whatever? And I'll tell you, that quarterback came out there and showed poise, and he basically really kind of looks so like he's been there for a million years. And I know, listen, I know he's a D1 kid, and maybe that's something to do with it, right? Maybe the speed of the game for him, maybe he saw things a lot slower, but it showed maturity, and I think the kids really rallied around him.
Well, and here's the thing, it was pretty evident early. If for the people that got to see the game, those one-on-one matchups, I mean, once he knew he had his receivers, and it wasn't just one, you pointed it out before the broadcast as well, multiple 100-yard receivers. once he knew he had one-on-one coverage, he was letting the ball fly and letting the playmakers go make plays. I mean, it was not he wasn't running passes. He didn't do anything other. I mean, he was very good on his feet. He was very good in the pocket, but he was very nonchalant. Oh, there's my one-on-one matchup. Bang, let them go do their thing. And 9 times out of 10, it was happening. Now, that being said, Coach Sirianni made a statement. I posted it, the interview with Bechtel draft time. They had to Coach Sirianni that was a pre-recording, and he talked about how this team has a chip on its shoulder. I agree with you. I think that you're going to watch a W&J team that probably ran a lot today. They were putting in the sprints or the gassers or whatever Coach Sirianni's mentality is with that. But I promise you they're going to come out next week and it's going to be a different ball club because they got punched in the mouth early. All eyes now, I think, not skip this week, but all eyes now get really focused on 2 weeks from now when W&J and Grove City meet because of what they did in Cortland. I think it's their conference right now. If looking at it, week 1, week 0, whatever you want to call it, I think that's the team runner at the moment. It would be them and St. Vincent right now as the two teams that are 1-0, and I would put Case in that ranking. Maybe they get 3 because they didn't lose, but they didn't win. Where do you see this Utica team going this year? What are they? Are they the kind of target on their back?
I think now a little bit of the, it's probably more like the cat is out of the bag. They're not going to sneak up on anyone now, right? I think, we got a big RPI coming in, our first home opener next week, which I'm going to go out there and check out. They're not sneaking up on anybody. So I feel like once they get through that and conference play at the E8, we've always said that even the teams on like maybe the bottom half of the conference, they always play each other hard. The coaches, they all know each other. Half the time, the coaches might have coached with, and Faj is, I heard a stat about Faj is the longest tenured coach, in New York. A lot of guys come out of that Utica coaching tree. So they know each other intimately, and I think it's really about, for Utica, clean up some of the things that we saw. There was way too many penalties. You're not going to get away. First game, I get it. But 133 yards and penalties, some serious ones too. With the targeting call and getting an ejection, like that's not gonna. If you really want to get to the next level and really kind of enforce your will, not only in the conference but possibly NCAA tourney, you gotta clean some of that stuff. And I know they will, right? I think it was just again a very aggressive approach. Some of the penalties, they get out of bounds or whatever. Like that's the type of stuff I feel like they have to clean up because the great teams do. The great teams go out there and they play disciplined. And I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think Brockport went and played, Buff State and manhandled them, right? 41 zip, like had their way
from the jump.
Like so from the jump, like really instill their will on that team as well. I think Brockport is going to be another team here, but there are a lot of teams. Listen, Hart has a new coach. Ed Raby now is, at St. John's Fisher. He's a tough coach. He has a tough way of building teams. They're not just going to roll over and say, oh, you could have the E8. I think it's going to be a dogfight for the conference title because everyone always in the E8 really kind of feel like it's E8 championship. That's the first step. You get there. You get in the tourney, and then you take your shot against some of the best teams in the nation. And I think now Utica is going to put themselves in a position to be in that conversation. It's for them. Everything's in front of them at this point. But it's no more sneaking up on anybody. I think now it's good versus good across the board.
Well, and just to wrap this, I'm not going to release my poll as I have the opportunity to submit a poll to d3football.com, and they for some reason listened to me. Utica made their way into my top 25 at number 25 because I don't think it was just a win. I think it's the going on the road, going to the one of the co-reigning PAC champions, and handling business the way they did. That looked like a top 25 team. I will also, leading our next two topics, I have 4 of those schools, 5 of those schools in my top 25. 4 of them, I'm looking at it now. 4 of them sit in my top 25. The WIAC. We're first going to go to Josh, and Josh, what I'm looking for you to explain. Did we learn anything new about the Warhawks this week, or is it exactly kind of what preseason and coming into game 1 we expected? And then talk to me a little bit about what goes into the 2 shows for Warhawk football, the QB Club and then game day broadcasts. Take
Yeah, I guess as far as what we learned about Whitewater, with the new offensive coordinator, Caden Murphy, I think we know that they're going to want to run the football, right? Pound the rock is the mantra. That didn't really change despite the change in the offensive coordinator. I mean, 436 rushing yards kind of proves that against Carleton College. And again, Whitewater dominating really on both sides of the ball. And Carleton challenged them a little bit, right, with their little up-tempo offense. The quarterback had some time. He gets the ball out fast. But I think Whitewater did a really good job of getting after him a lot. They lost a lot on the defensive line, I think, with their 8 to 10 man rotation on the D line and keeping things fresh. You could tell the last couple of the drives that Carleton was trying to kind of hang into the game, that their offensive linemen were gassed because our defensive linemen were still fresh. So that hasn't changed. The commitment to the running game hasn't changed. You still are not sure about the quarterback position, right? We got the 2 deep, and when talking to Coach Jace Rindle, it was both guys, Justin Klickner and Aiden Lucero, were going to see time. We didn't know how many series, whether it was going to be a quarter. Lucero started. He played, I think, 1 series, maybe 2, got his helmet knocked off, and then he sat for a while, and Klickner came in, and he had, I want to say, 16 carries. Like they're going to try to run the quarterback a little bit more, it seems like, and they did that a couple of years ago with Alec Ogden, who is a former D1 guy who came to Whitewater, played for Middle Tennessee a little bit, and then he was very effective running the ball with the option, a lot of RPOs. It looks like that might be the case when Klinkner is in. We didn't get a chance to see Lucero running the ball a whole lot, but the consensus from a lot of people that we talked to after the game, when we're taking our tour of duty through the parking lot, people are still tailgating in the revelry. People are worried about the health and the safety of the quarterback, right? And we see that with a lot of mobile quarterbacks. You don't want to get their head knocked off. The WIAC is a tough league, and maybe you can do that against Carleton. Do you want to do that against La Crosse? Do you want to do that against Platteville? Probably not 16 times, right? But that's going to be interesting. And the old mantra is, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have 1. I don't know that that's the case. Maybe they haven't made the decision yet. Maybe they're going to wait through the 3 non-conference games and make that call. I'm not really sure. I don't know that we're going to get a real for sure answer out of Coach Rindle for that. But it was just nice to see that the defense is still doing what it's doing. The running game over 400 yards, the offensive lineman with 3 guys back, that kind of Warhawk football is definitely what people have known. And I think that the return to that dedication, and even getting Tyler Vasian, I mentioned him last week, probably the most dangerous guy in the conference, ran a kickback 92 yards for a touchdown. 4 games into the season, teams were not kicking to him anymore. And they purposely would get it to that next to last level so he couldn't touch it. I'm wondering if that's going to be the same case, how they adapt to that. They did a couple of jet sweeps with him involved. I don't know how they're going to be able to incorporate him into that offense, but a lot of options for the offense. Kind of switching gears to those 2 things that you asked me about the broadcast. The quarterback club has been going on for years. It's on location, usually somewhere around the Whitewater area. A lot of good sponsors show up to give money to Warhawk football to support the program. A big chunk of their money is going to come for this upcoming trip to Mary Hardin Baylor. It takes a lot to send all the coaches, 60 guys, training staff, everybody down as far as a place like Texas, and they're not driving. When we went to Jerome, Georgia, a couple of years ago, they went down as far as, God, now this name of the city is escaping me, just somewhere right on the south end of Tennessee, and then they drove the rest of the way. They didn't want to go that far, and they drove. here they're flying. They flew 2 years ago. They're going to fly again this year. That costs a lot of money. So a lot of good sponsors go into the quarterback club. They have decided, and it would actually, I'm not going to say it was my idea, but I had kind of told them like, hey, one of my friends does a show. He is the voice of Tulane athletics for football, basketball, and also baseball in the spring. And they do a live video with a couple of cameras. And I said, this would be a cool thing if you guys are willing to invest this so we can get the infrastructure ready. And we did it for the first time this past Monday, and we're doing it again tomorrow night on location. And so long as, you guys all know, being somewhat tech savvy, if you have a good internet connection, then you can do this stuff. Sometimes that's not the case at a lot of these businesses that you go to, but it gets people a more personal feel to the players, and not seeing them just with their helmets on and their jerseys and the numbers. You get to actually see what they look like and, see the personality that they have, rather than it just being audio based on a podcast, right? So they stream live on all their socials. If you want to check out, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Warhawk Football, I think it went really well, and I think it can only get better. So we're going to be out tomorrow night. Show starts at 6:30 Central Time and will last about an hour. I got my play-by-play partner down there, my color guy, Bill O'Leary. He's a former Warhawk linebacker. He's in the Wisconsin Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame. Knows a lot about football. He was my D-line coach in high school, and when we got the opportunity to do this and take over for one of the other radio stations that were dropping Warhawk football, he was a no-brainer. We already do high school football together, and there's nobody I'd rather work with. He's got an infectious personality. He's got great catchphrases, keeps people on their toes, and he knows so much about the game. So he talks to the kids. I talk to coach, and that kind of leads into how we do our football broadcast on Saturdays, in one case Friday night, because if you guys have noticed, Whitewater sometimes play on a Friday. I know we had Eau Claire playing Thursday this past week, but on one Friday per season, I don't know why we can't get this out of the schedule. Perkins Stadium, where the Warhawks play, hosts the Wisconsin State Marching Band Contest, and it is enormous, and that is on a Saturday, and they can't get away from it. I don't know why they can't schedule an away game, so that's why Whitewater has to play on a Friday. So I think Stout comes to town this year, so we'll be playing on a Friday in a couple of weeks. But as far as the game broadcast, I'm an over-preparer. It was really tough because week one, there's not a lot of information, right? In fact, one of the publications I saw said this was Whitewater and Carleton's first ever meeting, and not wanting to rely so much on artificial intelligence, I just, out of curiosity, typed into ChatGPT if they ever played, and they did play back in 1930. And so that was kind of something that we brought to the table. But it's that kind of stuff that I want to be over prepared with. I've killed way too many trees and have way too many printouts. We work with a company called Spotter Charts from Tony Britt. It's amazing. My guy down at Tulane turned me onto that. It's a paid service, but you get the two deeps, you get stats, you get coaches, you get schedules. Everything that you want for a broadcast is at your fingertips with Spotter Charts. So it's pretty good. That's helped us immensely. We're on a rock station, so we got pretty edgy station imaging, which is awesome. And I think my big goal when I set out to do this, and this is what I tell kind of all aspiring broadcasters, and I've even worked with some of the guys at the campus radio station over at UW-Whitewater, and also with the Cable 19, because that's how they do, and that's who is on the WIAC network when people are watching. That is the campus people. So if we go to this flow thing, I don't know how that's going to affect them, but that's kind of in the air right now, as you guys know. But I tell them, make this sound, punch above, right? Go get to the level above you. Don't just settle on this being like a campus broadcast, like go above. So I want to make this sound, and the Wisconsin Badger Network is a division of Learfield, and I try to make it sound as smooth and as big time, and it's Division III football in Whitewater. It's not exactly a huge metropolis, but that doesn't matter. This team's won national championships. It's won dozens of conference championships. I want it to make it sound as good as possible. Like, I want the worst thing on this broadcast to be is me, because if I succeed in that, then I think we got a pretty good product going. So I'm lucky to have the support of my radio station and my company to give all the support that they need as far as getting things produced. We go over to campus on Wednesdays. We talk to the coach. We grab a player for our halftime interview that my partner talks to. So that resonates pretty good. We put up the podcast of the radio broadcast on the Facebook family page so people can listen or download it. I mean, and we get people emailing in that say they love listening to our parts with the kids and stuff like that. So clearly we're doing something right. It's our 4th year. We're on a 2-year contract. This is our 2nd one. It's up after this year. I hope we can keep doing it. I know I got about 2 minutes left, but if you guys got any other questions about that kind of thing, there's another cool thing that we got coming up that I kind of talked to them. And again, I'm stealing ideas from my buddy down at Tulane. He takes out coaches of some of the other sports, and they put a couple of cameras in a car, and they get a sponsor from one of the car companies in town, one of the car dealerships, and they go around and they just drive around town and they shoot the breeze. And it doesn't have to be about football. It can be about life. It could be about their playing career. I mean, Coach Rindle was the National Player of the Year. We could do that stuff. So that I'm hoping that's coming up. But again, just something cool to kind of highlight the program. So we're involved in a lot. I love it. It's the best thing I've ever done in a radio career. I'm 45 years old. I started part-time when I was 18. Went full-time when I was 22, and it's the best thing I've done in my career, and I hope to keep doing it for a long time.
Now, Josh, let me ask you what you saw this weekend from the Warhawks. Does that give you confidence that the rest of – I mean, because last year it's a middle of the pack. They finished middle of the pack. Is this team – that is going to compete with River Falls, is going to compete with La Crosseville, Stout, Oshkosh?
I think you need to have probably a little bit more stability in that quarterback position. Like, they didn't throw the ball a ton. Some of the stuff that they did was successful, but if there's no confidence from opposing defenses that your passing game is any good, you can't just load up that box and sell out. Like, you got to keep them off balance. Now, they wanted to establish the run. They wanted to assert the run. They did that. Now I think you probably find out who your quarterback is and maybe start working on those intricacies so that teams aren't going to just say, you're going to run, pass, run, pass, run. You got to mix things up a little bit, in my opinion. But I think they show just enough where the offense is going to be dangerous. If not, they're just going to wear you down. They got one guy that broke a 65-yarder and I think a 75 or 85-yarder, and then they got 2 big bruising guys that are back there. Another guy that came back from Minnesota to transfer down. He's from nearby Lake Geneva. So they got a good balance of a running attack. Now I think they just got to complete that whole offensive look, but that'll come probably in the next couple of games before conference season starts against La Crosse.
And, interesting you bring them up. We will, here at Dingo, we're going to get the opportunity to see a WIAC school, or WIAC school in person. A couple of us are going to travel up there to Carnegie Mellon and watch La Crosse versus. But before we get to that, let's talk to the guy that pretty much was everywhere in the last 3 days of the opening weekend of the football season. Mike, tell us about what happened in WIAC play, I believe, for the weekend. Start us off with the game that you started at, your alma mater, Eau Claire.
Yeah, that's right. Thursday night started the D3 football season, and that started where I was at. The WIAC this week had 7 teams. 7 of the 8 teams were in progress. La Crosse was idle this week. Like you said, you'll see them next week. But Thursday night was UW, Eau Claire, and Carroll. Really interesting matchup. Carroll's a really good team. They're in the CCIW, one of the best leagues in the country. They're always in the middle of that pack, upper half of that pack. They beat up on the teams on the bottom of that league. Carroll's a quality opponent. And just like you talked about earlier, Carlo, this was one of those matchups that was over. It was just a matter of time. I mean, there was a size and physicality difference in the trenches on both sides of the ball that Carroll just wasn't going to be able to match up with. There's a term that some people on D3football.com and D3 Football in the Huddle like to use. They like to say, like, WIAC lineman big. And that's what happened in this game. Carroll's a good team, but there's a difference between WIAC lineman big and a middle-of-the-pack CCIW team. It was just there was no overcoming it for them. Driving rain didn't matter. I think the rain just horrible conditions. I think the rain just kept the game closer than it would have been in fair weather conditions. Rookie first-year quarterback for the Blue Golds. He was an MN state champion in high school, and he was really efficient, threw over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the rain. It was a clean game, very, very clean. Not much more to say about it other than just how clean it was. The second game that I got to go to this week was one of the best matchups in the whole country, which was River Falls and Alma. And this game was not very clean. It was quite sloppy. I wrote down some notes so I wouldn't forget any of the stuff that I saw here. Caleb Blaha was 28 for 47. Not quite efficient, but 445 yards passing. That's pretty efficient. 5 touchdowns. That's pretty efficient. But River Falls also turned it over twice. But they were able to get 5 turnovers off of Alma, a 7 total turnover game. It was just a very sloppy game. Both teams did really good things, and both teams did some pretty bad things, honestly. This version of River Falls that I saw, they put up gaudy numbers, but they also ran 90 plays. This version of River Falls that I saw, I'll be completely honest, is not a WIAC champion version. It's just not. They're going to get a lot of praise this week from these gaudy numbers. But that version is not going to beat La Crosse. That version is not going to beat Platteville. They have to be way more sound. They can't make the same mistakes that they did. They had a ton of man coverage in almost all their trips formations. They run a ton of trips, River Falls does. And they saw a ton of man coverage in that. And they couldn't quite take full advantage. It was like, half the time they'd have a good screen, or they'd miss a block, or they'd run some sort of post pattern, and the throw would be a little off. It's just little things. They weren't totally sharp. I chop a lot of that up to week 1 stuff. Nonetheless, 2 good teams. River Falls took care of business. The other big game this week was definitely Platteville and Aurora. 2 ranked teams. Platteville on the road. Aurora's a good team, and they got totally bullied, and there's no other way to say it. From the jump, like you talked about with UW or Brockport over there on the East Coast. Some notes on this one that I thought were just totally crazy. Really was 547 total yards of offense for Platteville. They averaged almost 8 yards per play, and the rushing totals. Platteville rushed for 240 yards, and they held Aurora to one single yard. And that includes an entire half of garbage time, because this was 34-0 at half. The game ended 41-rip. It just totally lopsided. There wasn't a single statistic that Aurora can really look back and pull some pride from, I guess. It's kind of an embarrassing game for them, and I kind of feel for them because they scheduled a tough opponent, and we want to encourage teams to schedule tough opponents. But when something like this happens, I think that can deter a team like Aurora from doing that in the future. But it is what it is. And then a really fascinating game as we move a little more east across Wisconsin here is Stevens Point and Albion. Keep in mind, Stevens Point hasn't won a WIAC game in 4 or 5 years. And Albion is a consistent 6-4, 7-3 team. A few years ago, they were in the playoffs. They're always at the top of the MIAA there in Michigan. Albion's another good program. And Stevens Point rushed out to a 21-0 lead. Albion scored 21 in the fourth quarter to send this game to overtime. These are 2 really evenly matched schools. Stevens Point ended up winning this one in overtime with a touchdown and then getting a stop. But to see a team like Stevens Point take this step is really encouraging for their program. Of all the schools in the WIAC, I believe Stevens Point returned the most production this offseason. So this is a prime year for them to take a step. And as it looks like we talked about earlier with Eau Claire taking a step forward, this just makes the league better and better and better. And I hope that one of those 2 schools can pick off one of those better teams in the league, because that's just going to be better for the entire league. And I want the league to succeed as a whole overall. Another point that I didn't want to miss out on was Stout and Dubuque. You talk about a really sloppy game. It was this one. This was tons of action, a classic shootout, 38-35 Stout wins. But some points on this that I couldn't totally wrap my head around was Adam Moen being 20 for 38, 230 yards, throws 2 picks. It's just not the type of Adam Moen that we knew last year and that we expect this year. Similar to Caleb Blaha, these are the 2 best quarterbacks in the country, and they were good, but they just weren't super efficient. And Dubuque's a good team, so it's a very quality win. But Stout, similar to how they were last year in Week 1 when they lost to Carroll, inefficient, sloppy, 11 penalties for 130 yards. If you give up 130 yards in the WIAC, I don't care who you're playing, you're going to lose. You can't do that and expect to win in this league. They allowed over 5 yards per play to Dubuque, another thing that you can't do. But this is another game that included 7 total turnovers, similar to River Falls' game. So just sloppy play. I think a lot of that is Week 1. You're going to see that across the country. Teams getting used to playing with one another. You're hitting a new opponent. The game is really fast. A lot of these players that are playing for the first time, man, you're wide-eyed. I mean, I remember that first time that I stepped onto a varsity field. It takes a while. It takes a half for you to really calm down and be like, okay, yeah, do what you got to do and read your keys and listen to your coaches. So I think a lot of that is taking place here in Week 1. But the biggest result this week had to have been the Oshkosh and Linfield game. 2 really good teams. I know, Carlo, you had some thoughts on this game. What did you see from Oshkosh and Linfield?
So, one, I think all of us coming off of last year's contest between them, we all kind of expected that this was going to be a very competitive, maybe back and forth, come down to the wire like it did a year ago. We didn't see that. In fact, Oshkosh, other than the early turnover where their defense then, really shut things down, got the offense back the ball, the offense goes on a roll, rolls down the field, gets into the end zone, and that kind of became pattern for Oshkosh. It was a bit surprising that, when we talk about the WIAC, the WIAC, and we people say that it's the best conference in Division III. I had a buddy today explain it to me as it's what the SEC kind of wants to be. It's 7+ schools that are competitive. It's not Alabama and then 1A or 2A and down. It's Whitewater. It's Stout. It's Oshkosh. It's Platteville. Platteville, I think, very upset that they've kind of not been talked about after being conference champions last year. They come out in Week 1, and like you said, garbage time didn't give up very much yards, let alone having garbage time kick in coming out of the half. La Crosse being the one not playing this week on the bye. Back to what we were talking about, the Oshkosh game, I really thought that Linfield looked outmatched, outnumbered. There was a size discrepancy. Granted, I think there were a couple plays where Linfield missed. That it got a little bit to the point where I said this to Tony about the W&J Utica game. Everything that could go wrong for W&J in that third quarter did go wrong. Everything early for Linfield that could go wrong, dropped passes, penalties at the wrong time, missed tackles. Those things happened to Linfield. I think Oshkosh capitalized on mistakes. My question is, where does this put Oshkosh in the conversation? Like, where should people be looking at Oshkosh when you're talking about this WIAC going into Week 2, Week 1, whatever? I know we labeled it Week 0 last week, so Week 1A/2. What are we looking at right now in the WIAC? And I guess I'll answer that first with a question. Are we looking at the same WIAC where you guys are just going to beat the shit out of each other now for like we have one more non-conference week and then you guys are going to beat the shit out of each other for 8 weeks and whoever comes out swinging, and then number 2, maybe number 3 are all going to get in? Because it's hard to say that there's not a better conference in Division III football right now.
Right. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. These teams are really going to start just hammering each other. And, like you said, with lacrosse being idle, I'm really interested to see what lacrosse does, because all of a sudden, if lacrosse goes across the country and does what they did to RPI last year, 35-0, if they do something like that, or even just win the game against Carnegie Mellon, they win it in overtime, whatever, they just win that game. But now all of a sudden you go, holy cow, now you got lacrosse. Don't forget about them just because they didn't play. Platteville's upset, but talking about Oshkosh and what you mentioned right away, this was a super one-sided game. I mean, total yards 435 to 162. I mean, that's like almost 2.5 times. Pass yards 300 to 140. Rush yards 134 to 22. Linfield's going to be okay. They're a good team, but that's utter domination on going halfway across the country, which is really difficult to do. So yeah, I think Oshkosh, to answer your question, is right there at the top. This is a 6-horse race, but what I saw from Stout wasn't too didn't bode too well for them, I think. So a lot of teams have a lot to clean up, and that includes River Falls, who you're going to hear all week about how great they were. They were good, but they were not great.
All right, and now, Dave, you're going to have to wait. We're not there yet. We're not welcoming North Central yet. We are going to the CCIW, but you got to hold on a second. Matt, tell us about the CCIW and give us a little bit of insight into what goes into your preparation for a game day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just start here, because what I'm going to say is Oshkosh, you got to go up against the reigning Division III national champions in North Central here next week. So here this Saturday. So not so fast, as I think is what I'll say here. But let's start with them, right? They had the week off. Again, preseason ranked number 1. They play Oshkosh next week. What do you say about North Central, right? They're number 1 in everything. They're 15-0 coming out of the year. However, the question I have a little bit with them is, who's going to replace and play at the level and the expectation of Luke Lanen, the back-to-back Gagliardi Trophy winner? You got Jacob Parody with 170 yards and 7 touchdowns. They lost Joe Sacco. I mean, he ran for 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. They lost Bobby Bamer at tight end. And then defensively, you had, BJ Adamczyk and Zach Gore. I mean, they had 120 plus tackles combined last year. Angelo Cusimano, and there's a whole other list, right? But they're North Central, so they're gonna reload. So it's like, okay, they've got Thomas Gokna, he's coming back. He had 961 yards and 13 touchdowns. Jack Rummel, Miles Walton, Charles Coleman at the running back spot. And when you look at this, it's like they have 2 first team D3 D3football.com preseason All-Americans, and the tackle in John Sullivan, and the safety Braden Garrigan. And then, here, let's add 2 more preseason All-Americans on the second team, the tackle Cortez Jones, and then the cornerback Romarion Roby. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine at the end of the day. So, so at the end of the day, right, the CCIW goes through Naperville, and frankly, this year's champion is going to have to go through Naperville, there as well. But, coming off a couple of things, one, they don't have a roster on the website yet. Kind of typical North Central. They don't show their cards at all. But they're coming off leading the Division III in red zone defense, passing efficiency, first downs. So look, they're going to be dominant on both sides of the ball. So they're number 1 until someone proves them otherwise.
Matt, there was another CCIW team, obviously North Central, got to do what they have done for the past couple years and kind of just watch how the landscape sets out in week 0, week 1. There was another team in action that I was interested in your thoughts. Early did not look good. The box score would tell you it was a way closer game than maybe it was. What did you think from Wheaton this week as they traveled to Alliance, ultimately losing 37-29?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm gonna go all through the teams here in the CCIW, but yeah, next is Wheaton, right? It's like they're 9-2 coming off last year. They've got two first team preseason All Americans and Peter Johannick and Luca Torti. Aiden Kingsbury comes back on the offensive side, but I didn't think they looked great. At the end of the day, they did not look like a typical Wheaton team. I mean, they were down 37-7 at the end of three quarters. They put up 22 in the fourth, and if you go to Wheaton's website, it'll tell them, the late rally falls short. It didn't fall short. Like, at the end of the day, Mount Union wasn't going to lose that game. Mike Maloney for Mount Union was all over the board, but like Mark Forcucci, I mean, he's a baller. Like, he still had 273 and a pair of touchdowns. Receiving Seth Kortenhoven, I mean, he had 11 for 107 and a pair of touchdowns. The big factor for them is at the running back spot. Who's going to be running for him this year? That's the big thing for them. So, they need a dominant, running back after, 9-time senior, it felt like sometimes Giovanni Weeks. It's a running back by committee right now. And we don't really know what we're going to see there, but they gave up a ton to Mike Maloney, and 61 yards. He was second on the team for Mount Union in rushing at the quarterback spot. So again, something uncharacteristic of Wheaton is giving up a lot of quarterback yards. Like, the only one you would probably see that, right, is Luke Lanen, but that's really about it. Now, when we go down to Wash U, kind of third in the CCIW preseason poll here, right? Coming off an 8-2 year, 7-2 in the CCIW. They missed a playoff spot after a late season loss. Didn't get in the Isthmus Bowl because Wheaton did. But it's such a transition year with a lot of major offensive turnover. As an Augie broadcaster, I'm happy to see Ken Hamilton and Colin Goldberg are gone to graduation. They were studs. Junior quarterback Levi Moore, takes over. They still have, a running game led by Fred Ware. But, when you take a look at what they did, yesterday against Rhodes, I mean, Rhodes not a great team, but 49-0. Levi Moore had 117 yards through the air. Fred Ware had a $103 and a pair of touchdowns on the ground. Oh, and Levi Moore, by the way, had 65 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So that dynamic quarterback for Wash U and that dual threat's going to be pretty nasty. And then, Joy Chain, the linebacker, he had an interception. Ryan Schmecky, he had an interception. But really nobody stood out, I think, defensively in that game. So we'll kind of see how that kind of grows over time. But if we go down to like Illinois Wesleyan, they were playing the Dutch from Central Iowa, and they come off a 500 season. It's a new era, right? So you have Jared Williamson takes over as the head coach. He made some stops there, like Robert Morris and Roosevelt. However, he was previously served for the Wesleyan offensive coordinator and QB coach for a couple of years, back in 2008, I think, to 2010. Veteran Mike Murray leaves Elmhurst, comes here, come back to his kind of alma mater there. So they have a really strong and rich tradition, and they lost 27-18, which we felt was going to be a pretty good, Central Dutch team. It was pretty close the majority of the game. I mean, Dermot Smith had 155. Malik Gray had 64 yards on the ground. So like none of these numbers are amazing. So we're like either Wesleyan went up a notch a little bit and could be a little bit more competitive for that number 4 spot maybe in the CCIW 3 spot this year, or the Dutch maybe didn't look as good in week one. So, I always kind of think about the ARC and the CCIW as like somewhat comparative leagues, from that perspective. So, interesting team to watch. I mean, we talked a little bit about the Carroll game. I'm not going to go into a ton, about that, but Reed Breckheimer did Reed Breckheimer things. So, he did exactly, I think, what everyone kind of thought he would do. 6 receptions, 78 yards. Led the receiving core for Carroll. Did exactly what he could do offensively, because that's really all they can really go to. They had to go back and forth with a couple of quarterbacks. Charlie King, then Alicia Nieves, but Nieves led on the ground a little bit. So again, I think Carroll they're a little bit, I think, in a reloading phase, to some degree. So it'll be interesting to see really kind of what they do. I mean, the offensive line is anchored by Max Katsanos. They average 140 yards rushing a game in 2024. So it'll be curious to see what some of the seniors will be able to do kind of this year. So again, we didn't see a ton from Carroll, kind of in that game. So I'm not quite sure, what they're necessarily going to do within the CCIW this year. And then, we went over to Augustana. Augie went over that was a great game. I mean, my Lord, between them and Simpson, they won 42-41 in overtime. And, we saw, some really good stuff there. I mean, we had Ethan Vraybeck, Sean Schlancer offensively. Both went over, a Century Club. Schlancer had a pair of touchdowns. Vraybeck caught one as well. Mikey Brosnan almost clipped the 100 yards and a touchdown. And Jimmy McCoo, the Illinois State transfer, he came in and passed for 375 and 4 touchdowns and looked, albeit really darn good. The last time the Vikings passed for over 300 yards was November 5th of 2022 against Carthage, when Cole Bardwell went for like 361 and 4 touchdowns. So, defensively, they struggled a little bit. They're in the secondary. They've got a handful of new faces there in the secondary. So a lot of it's about communication and coverages and learning some of that stuff. And it was there were some drops by Simpson that, could have really made that game, kind of one side or the other. But I think offensively, felt really good about what they were doing. Jimmy McCoo was really able to kind of move out of the pocket and get moving around, which was really nice. So again, hopeful we see a really strong, Augie offense here as we go into CCIW play here in 2 weeks. They go against Wheaton. So that'll be an interesting match kind of out of the gate. North Park, I know we're getting a little close here on time. North Park won 35-19 over Ripon. Justin Green, 312, 4 touchdowns. Jeremy Mbongo, he did what he does. 6 catches, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just a beast at the receiver. So again, that's a big weapon that they're going to have, for them here as well. And then, last, as we look at Carthage, they won in a game with Lakeland 51-40. Really the highlight as we think about Carthage going into this year is, does the train start with Bryce Frank, 224 on the ground and 3 touchdowns? He was going nuts. Not a lot of threat through the air offensively. But again, you look at Lakeland and Robbie Michael had 350 and a pair of touchdowns. It's going to be, if you stop their run game, you're going to pass all over them. It's kind of what it feels like. Mm-hmm. So again, Carthage coming in at 8. And then lastly, Milliken comes in at number 9. And again, new head coach, Billy Ryback returns home. He's been kind of all over the board in terms of NCAA levels. And I was trying to think, when was the last time? Gosh, they haven't won a game for, it felt like a couple of years in the CCIW. So, so it was a nice win for them to come out and and get a good win, Milliken over Luther. Again, not a great team, so not a ton there. And then, Elmhurst, new head coach, Mike Heffernan comes in. They have John Odom that's returning at quarterback. So that's a bright spot for them. But they were off this week. We don't see them until this week when they open up. And then lastly, we launched the first game, CCIW Network, through the Huddle fan app. It went awesome. So we think about the WIAC network and now the CCIW network, great alternative experiences to watch games.
Now, Dave, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk to us about North Central. I got to hold you 1 second because I got to put my, Dingo Talk side of me has to come out. Coach Nichols, how is the season going thus far with the young pups that are working their way up to eventually being high school and then college ball players? How is the team looking?
Oh, you're talking about my son's 3rd and 4th grade team?
Oh yeah, the young pups. We got to give them a shout out as well.
Dude, we lost a really close game here today. Not gonna lie, we made some ridiculous throws, some ridiculous runs. All kinds of kids that stepped up that otherwise you had question marks on, right? Man, it was a ton of fun to be back in it. My voice is a little hoarse, from doing it, but we had a ton of fun. We played, is one of the best local programs. And we really held our own and just came up short in the final drive, here at the end of the quarter, but lost 14-7. But man, we have got a ton of talent. All the parents that helped make it happen is awesome. So it was just a ton of fun. It was definitely like super dad moment for sure.
A man that wears many hats. And now, David, I have pushed you off long enough. Let's hear it. Welcome to the chat, North Central. Division III football has started. Let's hear what we're expecting from North Central and Naperville as they prepare for Oshkosh come to town.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say great stuff, guys. A lot of fantastic insight, commentary on kind of what's been going on so far. But I got to step back to the coach, though. So I live in Valpo. Adrian came and played Valpo on Saturday night, and at halftime they had the little Valpo Pop Warner kids, the 6U, 6 and under, do a scrimmage at halftime. Absolutely one of the most fun, exciting moments of my entire weekend was watching these little kids go head to head. It was fantastic. College programs need to get those Pop Warner kids out as much as they can and do that kind of thing if possible. I'm telling you, it's a crowd favorite. I also have to tell you, Adrian pulled off a big win. Valpo, they're an FCS opponent. It was an exciting game at the end. Noah Boudry threw a great ball, as you would expect, fits right in with Adrian. Needs a little more help from his offensive line, but let me tell you, the kid, Trey Brueggemann, number 2, the running back, is a beast. If you get a chance to watch Adrian, take it and look for number 2. He's not hard to miss because he's got his hair hanging out of his helmet. But that guy gets the ball, and he looks for defenders to eat. I'm telling you, he runs hard. He's 6'1", 220 pounds. I was thoroughly impressed. Wouldn't be surprised to see that guy move up or move on at the end of the season if he doesn't feel that Adrian's got a future. All right, North Central College. Obviously, I have no inside information. I'm not tied in. I'm a fan. I'm an alum. I played back in the day. I'm one of those guys that has a lot of loyalty, energy, enthusiasm, and passion. Anything I've been a part of, I'll be a part of it for the rest of my life. So I just want to make that clear. I don't have any specific insights. Jimmy Miller is somebody that I played with, the current athletic director. He was a receiver. I was a strong safety. So we had a couple clashes during practice from time to time, but love Jimmy. He's done a great job there. When you look at North Central, obviously the big question is who's going to take over the keys to the kingdom at offense. Luke Landon was awesome, but let me tell you, there's probably no less than 10 options for North Central to choose from at quarterback. You've got at least 3 guys returning. You've got 4 or 5 other recruits coming in. I think it was 5. And then you got Garrett Wilson, transfers in from Oklahoma State, preferred walk-on, worked his way up to number 3 on the depth chart as a walk-on at Oklahoma State. Kid's got skills, throws an awesome ball. And Demir Ashru, let me tell you, the talk on him, I mean, he made all kinds of noise in the recruiting world. He went to Ferris State, had some people ahead of him, didn't get on the field. I would have loved to have gotten over and seen some practices and watched those two go at it. But from what I'm hearing, it seems like people are saying Garrett Wilson has the upper hand. But that's not to say that Demir is not going to see the field. So it could be interesting. And yes, Coach Spencer, a little bit of gamesmanship. The actual 2025 roster was up for a while, and then it did disappear sometime in the last 2-3 weeks. So that's always interesting when coaches do that. I get a chuckle out of that. Side note, when I was playing, Brad Spencer and his brother Tyke used to come to our practices and play one-on-one in the end zone. And after one of the national championship games, I reminded him of that moment. It brought a big smile to his face. But when you think about running back, yeah, Joe Sacco's gone. But I'll tell you what, he's been banged up. He was banged up last year quite a bit. Sean Allen, Charles Coleman, and a freshman phenom last year, Donovan McNeil. He entered the game. I don't remember which game it was now, but he entered the game at the end of the third quarter, ended up finishing the game as a leading rusher with 115 yards. And he was playing against the other team's number 1 still on the field.
Right.
So we'll be okay at running back. There's always good linemen. We do have some talent returning. So the offense may be a little behind the defense because I got to tell you, the other thing that happened with North Central and nobody talked about last year was our defense experienced a significant amount of injuries, particularly in the secondary. And while you normally would say, oh, man, that's a big problem coming into this year, it's great because a lot of guys got a lot of time. We actually had taken one of the running backs and moved him over to help shore up the secondary because of the injuries. Same thing happened in the linebacking core, and that brought Matt Janiak out as a freshman last year. And he saw a lot of time, particularly in the playoffs, and he was a stud. And the other thing is when you look back, at the defense and you see everything that's coming back, the defense was getting so much better throughout the year. You see what they did to Susquehanna and Springfield during the playoffs. I mean, I was surprised. And those guys, I think, are going to set the tone with Oshkosh out of the gate. Now, Oshkosh, they did awesome. And I'll tell you what, if they come into Benedetti Worley Stadium and if they can knock off North Central, I think they quickly become the team to beat in the WIAC as much as, some of the other teams want to lay claim. But, I expect it to be a big brawl. It's going to be interesting. I'm sure Oshkosh will travel well and bring a great crowd. So there's going to be a lot of great energy on Saturday. I can't wait to see it. But overall, I think people should really pay attention to the North Central defense this year.
Absolutely. All right, Tony, what are you watching for in week 1?
So honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of good games coming up, right? Especially in the E8. You got Hobart at Brockport. Brockport now again kind of inserted their kind of dominance a little bit. Hobart lost a tough game to Alfred, who there were a lot of people kind of like surprised and kind of a stunner. I wasn't. Alfred is a very, very good team, and if you let them hang around, they will do that too. Another team who's not going to stay quiet and just let Brockport and Utica and Cortland kind of just have it amongst themselves. They're going to want to be in that picture. And I think another good game to us, obviously, aside from Utica and RPI, which is going to be a good game as well. Everybody's going to be looking at Cortland, right? They're playing Union and kind of seeing how does Cortland respond from last week, and is it true? Which Cortland are we going to see? I think all those. So I think there's going to be a lot of good non-conference E8 games this week, and we're really going to kind of see people, kind of make their case. So I'm actually going to go to the game. It's a 6:00 game at RPI on a Saturday night, so the tailgate crowd will be seasoned for that game for 6 p.m. kickoff. no doubt. So it should be a fun time.
I like that. Seasoned. That's Wisconsin drunk, right? That's or Wisconsin sober. Sorry,
Wisconsin sober for
Whoops.
sure. Yeah.
Hey, listen, there's the tailgate slip. Maybe it was a Freudian slip. Thinking of Wisconsin, Josh, what are we watching this week?
Well, we're going to go down into NAIA territory. We're heading down to Chicago, St. Xavier for Whitewater. So non-conference game number 2 for the Warhawks. They just got pounded in their opener at Indiana Wesleyan, which was, I believe, ranked 6th to start the season. It was 31-3. Not a whole lot of positive stuff to take away from that for St. Xavier. I think their starting quarterback was, 9 for 25, a couple of picks as well. The running game wasn't so strong, but again, this is another opportunity for Whitewater to really assert itself and maybe help figure out what is going on at the quarterback position. We're going to have the scoreboard going, and I'm going to be monitoring a couple of things during the broadcast. Lacrosse and Carnegie Mellon, we already touched on. I'm going to be looking at that one. You guys touched on Oshkosh North Central. Wartburg and Stout will be very curious to me as well. Stevens Point might be able to grab win number 2 in 2 weeks. They will be hosting St. Norbert. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that one as well. So those are just a couple of games in addition to mine that I'll be broadcasting. I'll just be watching. I'll be doing some scoreboard watching.
And on the other side of Wisconsin, there, Mikey, how many are we getting to this week? And how many games are you going to be covering on Twitter? Because I'm going to tell you, it made my job real easy. I just had to wait for the tweet to come across, and now I got to watch like 4 other games and know what was going on with all the Wisconsin schools. Mikey, what are we watching this week?
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'll be yet. I have a couple options with Stout and River Falls, but speaking of that, River Falls versus Co this week, that's a big one. One of those teams is a playoff team from last year, and it's not River Falls. So that's 2 good teams. Lake Forest and Illinois College, that's going to be a great game. How about W&J and Hampton-Sydney? Muhlenberg and Endicott. John Carroll and Johns Hopkins. What's the better John? How about RMC and Central? That's a big one. And then Mount Union and Grove City. Did I read that right? That's happening. That's probably the game of the week right there. Someone's O has got to go there.
Mike and Tony, since you guys are now part of on the other side over there on Dingo Talk, where we pick 10 games, just so you know, that one, maybe start looking into it. That is on the list. Mike might be onto something. Probably the game of the week, although might not be, because we are going to Carnegie Mellon UW-LAC, so I may use that as the game of the week. But we're going to do things a little differently to close this out. I think we got pretty much the final thoughts from the rest of the panel. I'm going to let Matt share his final thoughts, and then I will wrap things up, and we will get you Chuckleheads on your way on this Monday. But Matt, go ahead. What are you thinking?
Man, I'm not going to be thinking a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to be in Savannah, Georgia. So me and 2 of my best friends, we're flying down. All of our birthdays are in September. We picked the weekend that Augie is off. They have an in-service day on Monday. My buddy's an administrator for a school. So we're going to be in Savannah, Georgia. So I'm going to be pocket watching and kind of tracking some scores. So, next week I'll be producing, from a place above a Chinese restaurant somewhere in Savannah, Georgia at the Airbnb that my buddy said he got. So, But I wanted to share actually a story because I thought this is super D3 in my opinion. So I got to know so Johnny Breeden, was a 4-year starter for the Augustana Vikings. Got to know him and his family extremely well, very, very close with them. Well, anyway, he graduated, and he happened to send out his thank you graduation card. Family, friends, all that stuff, right? We happened to send it to his cousin in Kentucky, who's no longer at that address. Lo and behold, he found out that this was posted by whomever had a TikTok account. And he's like, oh, So now he calls him Cousin Johnny. We fam now. Puts it on his mantle at his house. Lo and behold, they connect. Johnny starts a TikTok. 50 million views later, they meet up in Kentucky last week. His new cousin came to their place in Tennessee, and now they have a TikTok, we.fam.now. So again, such a cool D3 happen chance story that they ran with, and I thought it was just freaking amazing. Absolutely hilarious as I was hearing about this stuff when we were down in Tennessee, and I actually signed up for a TikTok literally so I could follow this. And Carlo, I'm following you as well. So, but other than that, particularly around this, but phenomenal story. We fam now. Go check it out. I'm gonna plug it for him as a shameless one because I love it. It's both just D3 community meets real people and how they form a bond and relationship, and that's the way it is across the D3 community. So it's just very reflective of it, and that's my final thought.
And I'm gonna take my final thought to give some roses out for this past week. I think anybody can see it. I know that for me right now with Matt doing the bandwidth thing so that we get the best quality, you may not be able to see my shirt. The word on my shirt is forward with an arrow. I think the D3, the coverage side of things, took a step forward this week. Obviously, a lot of us were watching D1 Rejects in the huddle, did their live game day stuff. The QB Club and the Warhawk broadcast, the broadcast that went on for a game that we didn't talk about, the Western New England Springfield game, which I don't know if you guys got the opportunity to hear it, but the mold that came across, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, just the New England accent being so thick and so into the game the way it was called. It was great. The people that were on social media, Mikey killing it across the way that he was presenting the games and what was happening. The other Tony did a great job with the Utica and W&J game. JB third, Vargas, all these guys. There is a group of growing people in this community. It's great to see. We've all had an interesting summer, to say the least. Maybe the most active summer in recent memory for Division III. Good, bad, indifferent, but there's a lot of good things that have come from it. I think what we saw from the Division I Rejects is one of those things. They really elevated their game. I think the way that JB and Frank and them continue to do their broadcast. Pat Coleman being on site for a bunch of things and doing a live feed for the Division I Rejects, showing off the tailgate area. It was just really fun. It was a really fun weekend. I'm excited for 2025. I'm excited to move forward. And with that being said, I don't know about these guys, but we have kept you long enough. Everybody else has something to do on this evening, probably sleep. People get to their wives and their kids. Dave's going to have a couple more adult libations, and we will see you all next week, Chuckleheads, for Voices in the Stands. Matt producing from Savannah, Georgia. So we'll see what happens next week. Thank you guys for joining us. Join us next week, and we'll see you next time.